So while we're waiting for a few more people to sign on, I'll just give a quick summary. If it's your first time at one of Community Board 8's virtually held committee meetings, you'll notice that first off the bat that you are unable to unmute yourself. You will be able to participate during the meeting through the use of the raise hand function. You'll be able to find that at the bottom of your screen under the reactions button. You may have to click more to find that, but once you find the reactions button, you'll be able to find the raise hand button. Make sure to click that and only click it once, because if you click it multiple times, it'll actually lower your hand and we won't see you. So after we hear from each of our speakers, Barbara and Rebecca and Wilma will call on folks as they see your hands come up, and you can ask questions or make comments about the presentation.
Just going to say one thing on my screen, it's under participants. The raised hand is under participants, so it may be different. I don't know if it's because I have an app.
If
you don't find it under one, it's maybe under the other.
That's a great point. Yeah, Zoom recently updated. So if you've updated your Zoom recently, then it's under the reactions button. If you haven't updated it recently, look for it under the participants button at the bottom of your screen. It'll open a menu and you'll find it there.
Are people still signing in, or should we get started, Will? What do you think?
Let me just check really quickly. It does look like I'm not seeing more people signing in, so
okay, I'm going to.
Looks like you can get started. And I'll just add one last thing, that the chat is only for if you're having needing technical support during the meeting with the Zoom. It doesn't go to the presenters. They will not see it, nor will the co-chairs see it. So don't use the chat feature to try to ask questions.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Barbara Rutter. I'm co-chair of the Health Senior Social Services with Wilma Johnson and Rebecca Dangor, who are our co-chairs. And we have an interesting two issues to talk about today. But first, I want to thank Will as always. He's always there to do everything and everything perfectly. So we want to thank him tremendously. The first issue that we're going to talk about, I was introduced to a family, the Koenig family. Ilana, at 8 years old, suffered with cancer, and the horror that affected it brought out this most amazing young woman that is going to 12-year-old Ilana with her sister Sabrina, and with the help of her parents, Doug and Rena, started a foundation, the Koenig Childhood Cancer Foundation, to help families that were in situations like them. And every time I look at their website and hear about Ilana, I get amazed that a 12-year-old has grown into such an important role and an important person with her sister. And so we're going to hear from her. Dr. Carney is also going to speak. She is a child psychiatrist dealing with children with cancer, and she has been helping the Koenig family as well as others. And so it will not only be inspirational, but I'm sure there will be issues that we could discuss with the family about the effect that cancer has. And then we'll have questions and answers. And after that, with a request from several of us about the problems with the vaccines, both medically and the logistics of signing up. It's been so frustrating that we have two people that were willing to come and answer some of our frustrations. But I do have to say, and Pauline, I told you I was doing this, I got my second vaccine today. So I am extremely happy person today. I am thrilled that I was able to do it. So with this, Ilana, would you like to get started?
Hi, my name is Ilana Konig, and if you would allow me to share my screen, I can do the presentation.
You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Hi, my name is Ilana. I live on the Upper East Side, and when I was 8 years old, I battled cancer. When I was diagnosed with cancer at 8 years old, I had no idea what was coming for me. I had no idea that I would be living in the hospital for 1.5 years. I would have 9 cycles of chemo, 15 surgeries, and I lost my hair. I also had endless physical and emotional pain, and I had scars on my body and my heart that will never go away. It was such a painful time for me, and I am such a dark, painful time for me, and I am so glad that it's over. When I did beat it, it was one of the happiest days of my life. There was no more pain, no more needles, no more surgeries, and one of my favorite doctors got me cupcakes because he was so happy for me. Even though I was done with cancer, there were other kids who weren't done. When I was walking out of the hospital room on my last day of chemo, I looked around and I saw all of the other kids who were suffering this horrible disease that I just finished. And I looked at my mom and I decided that I wanted to help. So I created a foundation called the Koenig Childhood Cancer Foundation that helps other children who are battling cancer and helps their families too. Our mission statement is to build a child-led community of healing that individualizes support to families fighting childhood cancer. The KCCF is kid-founded, kid-led, and adult-supported. That's what makes us different from other cancer foundations. I'm the founder. CBS News got inspired by our story, so they made a story on us, and I will play that now.
7-year-old Ilana Koenig, there is no better song that describes her battle with cancer than this powerful anthem. 'Cause I still got a lot of fight left in me. She's already beaten cancer. Her focus now, helping others beat it too. If I got through this horrible disease, if I got through this horrible time, then they should know that they're gonna get through it too. Ilana was 7 years old when she was diagnosed with a rare type of bone cancer. The chemotherapy so excruciating that even after treatment ended, she couldn't forget the pain or the kindness and generosity of those who helped her pull through. I feel like I got something and I want to give back. This February, Ilana and her 9-year-old sister Sabrina decided to found Koenig Childhood Cancer Foundation. The girls started with the money from their piggy banks, then bake sales, and now an online fundraiser. They've raised tens of thousands of dollars, the money going towards goodie bags, paying children's medical bills, and throwing virtual parties. I know what she experienced because I was there when she was going through a lot, so I know how it feels to other kids. If we raise enough money, maybe even stop cancer. Ilana says no goal is too ambitious. In fact, her beautiful rendition of Fight Song on her Instagram page has already rallied volunteers from around the world. She says she hopes to raise millions of dollars. Azerbaijan, Sweden, Europe, Israel, they all want to help. Like a small boat on the ocean. Her work already sending big waves into motion. On the East Side, Christina Fan, CBS 2 News. Single word can make a heart open.
That was the story that CBS 2 News did on me, which was awesome. I was the one who sang in the video, by the way.
Can you talk a little louder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our impact so far is that we assisted 35 families with their medical expenses. We held birthday parties and online events because due to COVID, they can't actually have birthday parties. And we babysit for kids who are battling cancer. We donated 450 care packages. We supported a bullied child with cancer. One of our children was severely bullied in school for having no hair. So we did a fundraiser where each of our volunteers sent her letters to kind of up her mood. We distributed 2,000 toys to kids all over the world. We accumulated 100 volunteers, adults and children globally. We provided 2 hospitals with PPE during COVID-19. We educated people in leadership and philanthropy, and we have 8,000 followers on Instagram. 18,000 followers on Instagram. This is Eve, a brain cancer survivor. She is the kid who has been severely bullied due to the side effect of chemo and radiation. Her hair never really fully came back. Our kids showed her how special and loved she is, which is so sweet. And now we are crowdfunding a $30,000 for her upcoming treatments and living expenses. That includes a hat that can help her hair grow back. Our recognition and awareness is we met with Senator Liz Krueger to talk with her about our idea. We talked with Congresswoman Maloney's office, and we will support her in any upcoming cancer.
For childhood cancer in her efforts.
We will support in any efforts she have that will support childhood cancer,
and she endorses us. She endorses our organization. Yes.
And we were featured on MSK's spring newsletter, which is really awesome because when we delivered PPE to it. This is the video that got 150,000 views on Instagram. It was about my story, and a lot of people liked it.
Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves in emotion. Like how a single word can make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. And all those things I didn't say, wrecking balls inside my brain. I will scream them loud tonight. Can you hear my voice? This time this is my fight song. Take back my life song. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if no. Keep going, never give up. You can do this. 'Cause I still got a lot of fight left in me. No, I've still got a lot of fight left in me.
That video kind of expressed how my story changed other people's lives, and I think that is amazing. An Instagram page with over 1 million followers saw our video and reposted our video on their page, which is incredible. The video that they posted.
It's not working. Okay, fine.
Oh, it's working. Never mind.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ilana Koenig, and I have 2 pieces of good news. My first one is that I survived cancer. My second one is that I turned my pain into an opportunity to create a foundation to help other children battling cancer. We have done so much to change the lives of so many kids, and I am so proud of what my foundation has done.
My name is Ibrahim. I finished my chemo.
Hi, my name is Shreyas Karki, and I'm a cancer survivor. Thanks to Ilana Koenig, my good news is I get to dedicate dozens of hours of my time helping fight cancer, and that's a beautiful thing.
Some good news is that last week, me and my sister delivered 150 care packages to children going through cancer. Donate here.
That's a fun video that expresses how much we're helping children battling cancer. Selena Gomez, actually, we met up with her for over an hour, and we told her about my idea to start the foundation, and she actually donated, which is really sweet of her. Our supporters have donated to us are Baked by Melissa, Dylan's Candy Bar, and Hair Decor. Here's a video of me getting hair done there. go and do your hair there, 10% of your profits will be donated to my foundation. So, yeah. We have been busy helping multiple kids, which is really awesome. This girl got diagnosed with COVID, so we went shopping for her and we got her supplies. These are some of the toys that we've been donating to kids around the world, and here we are delivering PPE
To Memorial Sloan.
Yeah, to Memorial Sloan. And this is us preparing care packages.
No.
This is me singing the song, If I Were a Rich Man. And if I were a rich man, I would spend the money to save more children's lives.
If I were a rich man, all day long I'd biddy-biddy-bum. If I were a wealthy man, wouldn't have to work hard. Yibby-dibby-dibby-yibby-dibby-dibby-dibby-dum. If I were a bitty-bitty rich, digga-digga-digga-digga-man, I'd build a big tall house with rooms by the dozen, right in the middle of the town. A fine tin roof with real wooden floors below. There would be one long staircase just going up, and one even longer coming down, and one more leading nowhere just for show. I'd fill my yard with chicks and turkeys and geese and ducks for the town to see and hear, squawking just as noisily as they can. And with each loud quacking, clucking, gobble and honk, we'll land like a trumpet on the ear, as if to say, here lives a wealthy man. If I were a rich man, yibby-dibby-dibby-yibby-dibby-dibby-dibby-dum. All day long I'd dibby-dibby-dum. If I were a wealthy man, wouldn't have to work hard. Yibby-dibby-dibby-yibby-dibby-dibby-dibby-dum. If I were a bitty-bitty rich, yibby-dibby-dibby-dibby man. If I were a bitty-bitty rich, yibby-dibby-dibby-dibby man.
Nina, are we going to hear from, oh, you still have more? Okay.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Our goal for 2021 is to raise $500,000. And to donate, you could donate to www.
We don't talk about donating, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. You can find us in this address, and all our addresses are here. And Ilana has message to everybody. Go ahead.
Even though I missed a lot of school days and I needed to be partially homeschooled, I did very well on all of my tests, and I got into a really good school in Manhattan. The pain I went through for 1.5 years is something most people don't experience in their whole lifetime, but I turned that pain into an opportunity to help others. So don't give up.
Are you still at East Side Middle School?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Are we going to hear from Dr. Carney now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ilana, that was wonderful. Thank you.
Dr. Kearney helped Ilana to go through challenging times, and she has been helping us since then. And she helps many, many children at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And we have built a relationship with her and with many other doctors. And now she's going to say a few words about the families and children going through cancer.
Thank you.
I can just speak, or I have a couple of slides with some diagrams I use when I'm teaching about this stuff, if I show it.
Yeah, let me turn the screen share back on. But Barbara, I want to let you know that Councilmember Mark Levine, the chair of the Health Committee, is also here. And I don't know if he has
I want to introduce thank you so much, Mark, for coming. Mark Levine is chair of the Health Committee and has supported this committee so often, and we thank you very much. So maybe, can we listen to, do you want to comment now? And then I hope you stay for the vaccine part, because you may have some information for us. Is there anything you would like to say now, Mark, or do you want to wait till later?
I am just absolutely blown away by Ilana. I am so inspired by you. I don't think I've ever met someone who is having such an impact at such a young age. So I'm just grateful for what you've done for this city and for kids, it seems like all over the world. And I just want you to know that I support you wholeheartedly. As Chair Rutter said, I chair the Health Committee in the City Council. If in that capacity, I can do anything to support your efforts, please count on me 1,000%. I will drop my contact information in the chat, but you have absolutely won me over. Thank you, Ilana, for what you've done for young people everywhere.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I've seen your website several times and I cry every single time I see it. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Koenig?
So it's really an impossible act to follow. I will try to do my best. I've followed some pretty tough acts my career. It's really, really rewarding to see Ilana just thriving and giving back, and it's so special when one of my patients, really driven to do that, motivated to do that, and able to do that. So that's really the bottom line. If I can just tell you a little bit about sort of what's right here in your backyard, in your neighborhood. I'm sure you know MSK well and have a working relationship with someone, but I don't know what you know about MSK Kids, which is really a mini children's hospital inside of Sloan Kettering, and we're the largest by volume pediatric cancer center in the country. And that might surprise you. And what that means is we have the most experience with common cancers and rare cancers. All pediatric cancers are classified as rare cancer. So, to get down to things that are common in children, it's still rare overall. And then you get to the things that are really rare or really difficult. And then, you're really talking about handfuls of cases, and Sloan Kettering is really a leader in those kinds of situations. So people who come here they're getting leading expertise across the board, not just their oncologists, but their psychosocial staff, their nurses. Everybody is at the top of their fields and leading their fields and teaching nationally and internationally. They're getting an individualized care plan, and it really is very accessible. I think pediatrics at MSK has a more diverse population than a lot of the adult medicine, and really sees people from around the world and in our own backyard. So it's very important that message is there, that MSK is accessible and available for people. And then, we have over 500 dedicated staff for pediatrics alone. We're a magnet hospital for nursing excellence, and then recognized in these other areas as well. I like to highlight that we are a site for New York City hospital schools, and we work so well. And education integrated into the care setting is a huge part of trying to help families find a new normal and help kids have some normalcy and developmental support going through treatment. And then, in response to COVID, we've made a lot of changes in how we deliver care. Telemedicine has really exploded and has filled in so many gaps, has made follow-up and continuity available at a time when things were really quite uncertain. So that's been really important. We also utilize 8 other sites and campuses in New Jersey, Westchester, and Long Island. So, you know, MSK is very accessible to people, but, you know, the heart of pediatrics and the heart of the hospital is right here on the Upper East Side at 68th and York. So for childhood cancer, you know, we really think of this as a family experience. The child is always at the center, and just like in Ilana's foundation, the child is the center of everything. But we know the huge impact that this is having on parents and siblings, and so we're looking at the family unit. And when we think about, you know, you may think, if you're not familiar with this, that anybody with a diagnosis of childhood cancer would just fall apart or, you know, be devastated. And of course, with the news, with the diagnosis, people are, and the news is just kind of shakes you to your core. But then many families are able to respond to that new situation, and with family support, community support, and kind of their own resilience pull through and find this new normal. And so for those families, you know, we kind of look at this blue bar of needing kind of the universal kinds of supports. They need help, they need information, they need pointing them in the right direction, they need, you know, all kinds of the regular everyday stuff. And then we have families at elevated risk and in crisis who need a lot more kinds of services. And we look at the beginning to identify those risk factors. We move quickly to kind of ameliorate those and bring that those risk factors down so that we can get everybody into this resilient, supported experience going through cancer treatment. So, you know, there are definitely traumas, but we also see so much resilience and growth. And I think, you know, you've had a beautiful presentation to demonstrate the growth and the resilience that we do see. And that's one of the reasons why people who come to work don't want to leave. And we have like amazing employees because we just get to work with kids like Ilana. So I'll just say 2 more main pieces, and this goes right to the heart of what the Koenig Foundation is trying to do because they understand this, that children and parents' well-being and mental health are interconnected. And so if you really want kids to thrive and somehow kind of recover from this, you have to make sure their parents are okay. And so we see parent mental health assessment as a standard of care. It is a standard of care across the field, and it's a big part of how we support families going through. We know that parents are at risk for all kinds of mental illness and any exacerbation, any stress-related exacerbation of any kind of medical or mental illness that they might have had pre-existing or developed while their kid is going through this. So we have to make sure we're taking care of parents, and then develop a problem yourself, and you have to choose between taking care of yourself or taking care of your child. Everyone always chooses their child. So it's really important that we try to make care accessible for parents because they're never going to be able to navigate a normal system that's already hard enough. So it's really a big part of what we do. And this is like really painting big brush strokes here, but we get down to the nitty gritty in terms of helping parents get the care they need and make sure that it's expert care. And then the last piece I just want to say is that this financial toxicity was overlooked for a long time. People would say, well, what is this in the grand scheme of things? It's the life of a child. So, you know, you just do what you have to do. And that really overlooks the kind of long-term and significant toxicity, and really toxicity means side effects. This is a side effect of cancer treatment, and that's really sad. It's not just the insurance. There's all of these additional expenses that families incur as they're trying to stay in treatment and support their family going through treatment. Usually one parent has to stop working to be a caregiver, and we know that 15% of families do fall below that poverty line just before and after the diagnosis. So it really is a risk factor. And then this adds to my previous slide of parent distress and marital stress between parents. And then, of course, like we all want to protect kids, but by early adolescence, kids with cancer are very aware of these kinds of problems in their families. And so they're reporting worries about financial stress because of their treatment. So kinds of work the foundation is directly impacting the kinds of things that we're constantly battling and trying to support and sustain families going through this treatment. You know, we do our best and we have great resources at Sloan, but we really also need help in the community and raising awareness like this and the kinds of, you know, garnering support and volunteers that Ilana is doing is so important. So I'll just end with that by saying thank you. Thank you to all of you for giving us your time and allowing us to talk about it more.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take the liberty of asking the first questions, and actually two of them. One, I did speak to Rena about it and it was very emotional. There's always, if there's a sibling or siblings involved, this is a family affair. And doctor, can you tell how you treat the siblings also that must be going through so much?
Yeah, that's totally fair. You know, I think the biggest thing we've found with sibling support is that if we can support the parents and usually kind of helping them garner the resources, then we can help the siblings too. We do a lot of recreational activities with siblings. We have sibling day on every day that there's a public school day off. The siblings, of course, pre-COVID, the siblings, there was programming in our playroom for siblings. We expect them to show up. We want them to see the hospital and be a part of their siblings treatment. Sabrina was able to do that a few times in the past as well. And, you know, that's a big piece. You know, I think when things are really escalated or kind of critical, there are always individual ways that we can pull siblings into family meetings, or our child life specialists are experts in talking to kids of all different ages about serious things. So definitely on our radar and a big part of the puzzle.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
And a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, just raise your virtual hand. I'll give it another minute, but in the meantime, I actually have a question for Ilana. You have such a beautiful voice, and I was wondering if maybe you could speak to what music and the arts mean to you, and whether or not you're doing anything with that to help inspire and bring joy to other children who are in your situation.
Yeah, music and singing means so much to me. Singing is actually one of the things that got me through what I went through. It kind of took me away from the world. It was like a bubble around me, a safe bubble that made me feel safe and protected. And I'd like to share that. I'd like to share that feeling of safe and happiness. And I did that by singing for other foundations before I created my foundation. I sing for the kids that I'm helping, and I think that's really amazing in helping them feel better.
Amazing. Are there any other questions? Rebecca?
No, I don't see any.
I'm just going to ask one other thing. I think we're not allowed to do fundraising on the community board, but we can talk about volunteer. I had an idea of volunteer, and particularly during COVID, I would love to celebrate birthdays, be somebody that helps celebrate birthdays, or when COVID is over, maybe take the sibling out or somebody else like that. I don't know if Rena or the doctor or Ilana wants to talk about what can be done, or just sign up on the website.
Yes, you guys can sign on our website. Ilana, send the website information to Will so that he can share. There are a lot of opportunities to volunteer. We can volunteer virtually. You don't have to be in person to do that. We have a lot of programs that adults help us with different sides of the business. And then we do virtual parties for children. And of course, even during the COVID time, you can use your mask and all that and go out with the children to park, babysit, or do parties in the park if it's a little bit nice outside. And obviously after COVID is over, if you have a dog, the kids love to play with dogs, or you can do babysitting. Obviously you would go through due diligence with our organization, and then we can match you up with the families. Sometimes it's a matter of getting a laundry detergent for the families. When I was in the hospital, the laundry detergent downstairs in the gift shop was like tiny piece one time, $5. And, you know, it's an emergency situation and your child needs the blanket and the toy lovey-dovey immediately and throws up, and you have to wash it. And you cannot run outside, get the laundry detergent. You have to wash it immediately. What you do is you go to the gift shop and buy it very expensively. Anyway, your finances are damaged by this illness and everything is expensive. So you can buy laundry detergent or other care packages that are essentials for the families and deliver them. Sometimes little things put such a big
they make such a big impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Please go to our website and register. We will always, there is always going to be something for you to do, because there is a huge pain behind this word cancer. It's not only cancer. There is so much into it, and there are a lot of opportunities for people to volunteer.
Thank you. Unless there's other questions, Rebecca. And Ilana, you're amazing. I hope to meet you in person one day.
You will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Wilma.
Okay, now we'll have Dr. Susan Ball. She's with the Walcott Division of Infectious Disease. And after that presentation, we'll have a chance to ask questions. Dr. Susan Ball.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to speak to you tonight, and just bravo, Elena. It was really interesting to hear your talk, and I'm so impressed, so impressive. I was asked, I'm an infectious disease doctor. I'm actually an HIV specialist at Weill Cornell, and was asked to just give a brief overview update of the COVID-19 vaccine. So I'm going to make it. Is this right the way you want it?
Yes.
Can everyone see the slides?
No, try it again.
I can.
Hit share screen and then click on.
Oh, I have to hit share screen. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I always forget to do that. All right, we'll do this. And how's that?
Good.
All right. So I'm going to run through some basic questions, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions afterwards if I haven't touched on something that people want to know. And again, this is really a fairly, it's really an overview of what things we know about the vaccine right now. It's not terribly technical from a virological point of view. So why should I get vaccinated? And the major 2, 3, 4 reasons are to protect yourself so that you don't get COVID, and also very importantly to protect the people around you, because if you are not infected, you're not going to give the virus to other people. So one reason why you should get vaccinated is because, as we all know, COVID runs the entire gamut range of presentations, from completely asymptomatic, where people get tested and find out they're positive but feel totally fine, have no symptoms whatsoever, to being extremely sick and to dying from COVID. As we know that many thousands of people have died from this. This slide shows just the range of different kinds of common ways that COVID does present. Very much what we would call a flu-like illness in the majority of people, but as we know, it can be a very severe pneumonia in some people. The more official name for COVID-19 is SARS-2 COVID-19. SARS stands for Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome. And you may have heard there have been other SARS infections and epidemics and outbreaks over the years. COVID-19 is the most recent iteration of that. And these slides were given to me, I should say, presented and developed by Weill Cornell and are clearly outdated. We know that, I don't know exactly when this slide was made, maybe a month or more ago, but we know that the current statistics are such that 465,000 adults, 465,000 Americans have died from COVID. And I'll just tell you, I just actually looked up before I came to the talk that today, 92,000 new cases were diagnosed just today of people around the country with COVID. It's way down actually from the peak. Just a month ago on January 8th, more than 300,000 people were diagnosed just on that one day. So the numbers of new cases are going down. But these are some of the symptoms that people can present with. I think you probably all are generally familiar with this. But again, why to get vaccinated is to protect yourself from getting COVID-19, but also if you're not infected, you're not going to infect others. And this is a very contagious infection, and those who have no symptoms can still spread it to others. And we can't control the degree of illness that others may get. If we have an asymptomatic infection, it doesn't mean that the person we give it to is also going to be asymptomatic. And that is a big problem in how people we have these super spreader events from which people die. So the big question that we've all had is the vaccine safe? One of the big objections is that it was made too quickly and shortcuts were taken. And I'm just going to go through a little bit this whole process. The COVID-19 vaccine is really based on decades of research of similar vaccines. COVID-19 is a coronavirus, and as I mentioned, there have been previous outbreaks with coronaviruses, and the technology for the vaccines has been in existence for all the different ones, has been around for decades. The usual process of vaccine approval, those timelines, as this says, timelines were overlapped to speed up the process, but all the same safety standards have been in place. It's just everything has been sped up because of the imperative and the need for it in such a global way. So usually, traditionally, a vaccine development can take really about 15 years, and it has four main aspects, each of which takes a few years. There's initially research into what's going on. Then there's what we call clinical trials of giving the experimental drug in various ways in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials. And then there's government review of those trials and the results, and then eventually production. And you can see all this process can take a while. And I just wanted, so that's why these years of research, these years to go into the production of a vaccine, we have compressed that. So the years of research we had before we started the specific coronavirus vaccines, we had the research being done, but the phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials were done what we call in parallel. Phase 1 trials, just to briefly tell you, phase 1 trials are done to just show that the drug or the vaccine, that it's not toxic. and it shows the actual pharmacological actions of the drug. Phase 2 trials are given to patients, to people with the actual illness or targeted population. Phase 2 trials are to determine safety and efficacy. And then phase 3 trials are to show different doses and efficacy, looking at also the risk benefit. So if there were side effects or if there were problems in phase 2, we see, well, if we can cure or prevent disease in many more people than we have side effects to, what's the risk benefit? And all these studies, all these phase 1, 2, and 3 are aspects of clinical trials that usually are separated out, phase 1, then phase 2, then phase 3. But as you can see, for COVID-19, there was such urgency in the whole world that these phase 1, 2, and 3 trials were overlapped. And this happened for literally hundreds of vaccines that were being studied around the world. In the meantime, also, vaccine production was started during these phase trials, and that's something that really hasn't happened before. But in the United States, anyway, the government really supported promising vaccines under study, supported them to start manufacturing them, so that if and when the outcomes were going to really be what we wanted, that the drugs would actually be ready and not wait too long. The FDA and the CDC usually wait, again, till phase 1, 2, and 3 trials are done, and then do this fairly lengthy review process. But all of this was sped up, and as we know, we have 2 vaccines that are approved in the United States, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, and you may have heard that also now the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which works a slightly different mechanism, that was also just approved by the FDA in the recent days. So do the vaccines work? The short answer is yes. And we have statistically for the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, they're more than 94% effective after 2 doses. You have no doubt heard these are the vaccines that are available to us and that have been out for distribution. The Pfizer vaccine is given at 3-week intervals. The Moderna vaccines are given at 4-week intervals. They both are messenger RNA vaccines, so they're not bringing active virus into the body. And they work by bringing a tiny particle of messenger RNA in a tiny, tiny little piece of fat, a lipid particle. And because that's very, very tiny, and that lipid particle is what's carrying the messenger RNA, that's why it has to be very, very cold, and why the cold chain is very important for these vaccines, that they have to be kept at an extremely low temperature before they're actively being used. These vaccines should be given. If you get the first vaccine as a Pfizer vaccine, ideally you should get your second vaccine as a Pfizer vaccine. Recently, because of issues with shortages and running out, there have been acknowledgement that you could get one and the other. In general, if you can get both of the same, that's what's most recommended. So what can you expect after getting the vaccine? The vast majority of people will have a sore arm after the vaccine, but side effects can include some more what we call systemic symptoms with fatigue and muscle or joint aches. People have complained of headaches, chills. Less commonly, there's fever attached. It seems that people who do get more reaction, it's after the second vaccine as opposed to the first one, but you can get these side effects really the first or the second. And you might not have any side effects, but most people, I would say, have a sore arm after the vaccine. Barbara, how's your arm feeling?
I can't raise this arm.
So that
say I'm having an effect.
So it's pretty self-limited. It will go. You can take Tylenol, and usually the sore arm will be gone by.
I don't even need Tylenol.
Okay, by day 3. It lasts 2 or 3 days. Some people get a more vigorous response, really do feel really run down. I have a good friend who got vaccinated and she felt really, really very run down for 2 full days and had a fever. That definitely can happen, but is not the norm. Most people, the side effects are extremely mild. And this indicates side effects are a normal aspect of getting a vaccine, and it shows that your body's responding. So I know here's a list of some of the questions that we have. As I said, the difference between the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine is really the length of time. They're both messenger RNA vaccines. How long does it take the vaccine to work? This is a great question. And that is, it's felt that you're not going to be protected against COVID in the initial days after vaccine. And we have definitely documented cases of people who developed symptoms right like the next day after vaccine and ultimately were found to actually have COVID. So it's not the antibody response that you need that is protective for you after the vaccination does take, they estimate, a couple of weeks till you're really protected. The vaccine is not known to cause any infertility, and this leads to the breastfeeding or planning to become pregnant. Everyone is really recommended to get vaccines. There's no toxicity to a nursing infant that we are aware of. So it's recommended to get the vaccine to nursing women and pregnant women. And also pregnant women should get the vaccine because pregnancy, women who get COVID can have a worse case of COVID if they develop the infection while they're pregnant. The question of, will the vaccine give me COVID? And again, the answer is no. The Moderna and Pfizer vaccines contain no active COVID or no active piece of virus. Other vaccines in the works have different protein particles from COVID itself, but almost all of them, the protein that's involved is called the spike protein, which is that part of the molecule that attaches to the cell. So it's not an active infection. And the question of, will it change my DNA? And this is absolutely not going to happen. The Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, they bring in a messenger RNA, which is really just instructions for our bodies to make antibody. It's not incorporating itself into our cells. It's not bringing in any foreign DNA. The question about if I have allergies, if you've had the real people that need to be careful in terms of getting vaccines are those who've had any kind of anaphylaxis reaction to a vaccine. Those people really need to talk to their doctors about what kind of reaction they've had. The other issue of a lot of people can't take the flu shot because of the egg component of one of the carriers of the flu vaccines. And so people who have egg allergies can't get vaccinated. Moderna and Pfizer do not have anything in those components, nor do they have any latex or preservatives. So in general, it's extremely rare that someone would have an allergic reaction. But definitely if you've had an allergic reaction to any antibiotics or to vaccines, discuss with your doctor whether you're a candidate to get the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. Will this vaccine hurt my community? You know, COVID is, as we know, has disproportionately hurt communities of color. And one really great thing about the studies that were done on these vaccines is they were done in very diverse populations. In the number of people studies is in the tens of thousands. People of color, people who had other morbidities like diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease. They really took a very diverse population to study. So that the feeling is that these vaccines are safe and effective for all kinds of people in all kinds of communities. And really, we are recommending that everybody get a vaccine if you have the opportunity to. I'm not going to go into all the details, but as we know, there's sort of a schedule of who's being offered the vaccines first. So healthcare workers and patient-facing people, essential workers, and people over the age of 65. Right now, anybody in that class or field should be getting vaccinated. In the meantime, we've all listened to Dr. Fauci, and we still have to be careful. Even if you get vaccinated, continue to wash your hands, continue to wear a mask, socially distance from people. The thing I remember is the 3 C's: close contact, prolonged contact with people, and crowds. If you can stay away from those 3 C's, those are really great ways to protect yourself. And that all has to do with the whole social distancing. Keep an eye on your health. If you're feeling feverish, if you're getting fevers, don't ignore it. Get tested and talk to your doctor. Cover your cough. And if you're sick, please, please, please don't go out into the community. Stay home. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be months away, but there is a really, these vaccines are very effective. And the more people we get vaccinated, the less COVID is going to be out there, the less COVID is going to be threatening to the people who are most vulnerable or to anybody else. So the light is at the end of the tunnel. Now, I know this talk did not at all discuss variants, and I know that is probably something on people's minds. So before there's a question about it, I'll just say that this is a really a very quickly moving target. We know that there are at least 3 variants coming from 3 different geographic areas of the world. The experts don't like to say the English variant or the South African variant. They prefer to give it a scientific name. But, you know, for our general discussion, we know that there are aspects of these variants that are a little bit worrisome. One being, are some variants more contagious? And that does seem to be the case. The other aspect is, are these variants more virulent, more dangerous? So far, that does not seem to be the case. But of course, the issue then is, are the variants going to be susceptible? Are vaccines going to be effective against variants? And so far, the observations are yes, with some caveats. Again, this is something that we're learning more about. It's possible that both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines may develop a specific variant mutation, so that in fact a 3rd vaccine might be recommended to completely ensure patients are protected. Some of the other vaccines that are in development, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the Novavax vaccine, both have excellent efficacy against the variants. But this is something that we're going to be learning a lot more about as the weeks and months unfold. I don't think it should hinder anybody who's in the population to get the vaccine. It should not deter anyone from getting a vaccine. If you have a vaccine available to you and can get one, please go get one. I think those are the main things. If there are specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Wilma, do you think we should hear from Pauline Ferranti, who's talking more about the logistics, or should we ask the medical questions now?
I think that you can, that's going to be some medical questions also with the next presentation, because the same questions could be answered by either person.
Right. So do you want to introduce Pauline then?
So I don't have the.
Okay. Pauline Ferranti is from the city. I don't have your exact title right here, Pauline. And I've seen works, and she will talk more about the logistics or the mechanics of going and what went wrong with the vaccine and so on. They're interrelated. I have so many medical questions and questions about the vaccine and the website. So Pauline, would you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I would definitely defer all the medical questions to the doctor because I am not a medical professional. But so hi, everyone. My name is Pauline Ferranti, and I work for the Office of External Affairs at the New York City Health Department. So I am pleased to be here tonight to talk through some of the concerns that we all have been experiencing around scheduling of appointments. And so how I like to explain it is that sort of a confluence of factors led to the appointment scheduling issues, and the main issue being supply. And because of the limited supply, it required appointments being made for individuals who were eligible to go and receive their vaccine. And because the city works on old, cumbersome technology, our website ended up being really difficult for people to navigate. And each of the individual sites had their own registration. And because the system just isn't integrated and we don't have the technology to be able to do that, and, sites can only release appointments as doses became available to them. They actually needed to have the available doses on hand before they can make the appointments available to people. And, even with all those issues with the technology, scheduling online was still the easiest way because we did see people who had really fast internet and, the ability to navigate websites quickly and have that technological advantage, ended up making a majority of those appointments early on, which only highlighted the technical and digital gap, not just for seniors, but for folks who may have limited access to the internet, may not have internet access at all. And so, the city really did try to set up another option, which was the phone line, which we also did hear some concerns about. But the phone line was put in place so that people who didn't have access to the internet or didn't feel comfortable using the internet could make their appointments. And the one benefit also about scheduling your appointment online by call if you're a senior is that you can schedule transportation to bring you to and from a vaccine site. Because also as part of the issue with the vaccine itself, it's just impossible to bring the vaccine to people. So for example, homebound people, we really needed to work very hard to make sure that we could bring people to the vaccine. All that being said, there is some good news. The mayor announced today that we reached over 1 million doses administered in New York City. So that's a good sign. But we totally understand that these connection issues and the scheduling of appointments has continued to be a problem for folks. And, we have hubs dedicated in all the communities to be able to vaccinate people. I think the question still is a matter of supply. And we're hoping that with the federal government amping up supply, with the manufacturers amping up their supply, both Pfizer and Moderna, hopefully with Johnson & Johnson coming online. As soon as more supply comes into the city, we're hoping that these appointment scheduling factors will be lessened, that the barriers that exist currently will sort of decrease. And we also are really hoping that as pharmacies and hospital systems and FQHCs and primary care doctors, as they start receiving their doses as well, that they all contribute to being able to vaccinate all New Yorkers. So again, I think, the problem with the phased distribution and the eligibility has been a concern for a lot of people. Thankfully, the governor has announced a new set of folks who can be vaccinated starting February 15th. So those are all the folks with underlying health conditions that are clearly defined, both on our website and on the state's website. So again, as supply continues to increase, we're hoping these scheduling issues decrease. And we do know, we're very well aware with how terrible city government technology has been. And we did do a revamp of the website. So we're hoping that it's a little bit easier to navigate. But I am here to answer any questions. I know the community has a lot. So I'm happy. I'll be here all night to answer as many questions as I can.
And just a reminder, if you have a question, raise your virtual hand. It's hard for us to see if you just raise your hand in the video. I see we have a question from a member of the public, Marjorie.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yes.
It's actually for the medical professionals. Is that appropriate at this time?
Yes.
It is very loosey-goosey. If you've had COVID and recovered, what the time frame should be between having had it or having recovered or having been diagnosed to being able to get a vaccine, because it is recommended that you get one.
Yeah, it's definitely recommended that you get one if you've had COVID. I'm not aware of a specific time. You know, if you were diagnosed yesterday, should you get your vaccine today? I don't have a good answer for you, and that may be shifting, unfortunately. Or you may be somebody who had, but certainly if you have no more symptoms, if you're asymptomatic, I think you should just go get your vaccine.
Yeah, that's the next problem with the myriad number of symptoms, and they keep growing for COVID, trying to self-define that one is now completely asymptomatic. And assuming you've gone through the quarantine time period, maybe even doubled it, it's just not scientifically comfortable.
Well, you know, it's in part, unfortunate, you know, why they call it the novel coronavirus, because there is so much we're learning about it. But I would definitely say if a person was diagnosed and, you know, unless they were, you know, in the ICU on a ventilator, if they're getting through their symptoms and feeling better and feeling like they're on the other side of it, within, I would say within 7 to 10 days could get the vaccine. Okay. Even if they're still having, you know, a little cough or their sense of taste
or
didn't come back.
dizziness or muscle pain.
Yeah, I think it's fine to get the vaccine then.
Okay.
Can I ask the second part of that question then? This is one of my questions. I've heard anecdotally many cases of people who had COVID in the past. When they had their first vaccine, they had a very strong reaction, almost like what you would expect with the second vaccine. So it's a two-part question. Do they really need a second vaccine? We can save it. But more importantly, is there a limit? Like, is there a danger to having too many antibodies or too much there?
Yeah, actually, I asked one of my colleagues about this because you had sent me that question, and the answer is that you should get 2 vaccines, even if you've had COVID in the past. And no, you can't have too many antibodies. So it is somewhat anecdotal because I have colleagues who had COVID in the springtime and had minimal reactions to the vaccines, but other people have a stronger response. So it's a little bit idiosyncratic. I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but some people might have a stronger reaction and others not. But definitely get 2 vaccines.
Okay, I do have a follow-up
okay.
On scheduling, because I actually went on the city site to try to do it and was told, no, you've had COVID in 90 days. Don't go away. Just don't try to schedule it.
Pauline, I don't know. That's not a
That's for the scheduling person.
Did you called or you went online?
I went online.
Yeah.
And it's actually for my husband because I know I have to wait 90. I had monoclonal infusion.
Okay.
But he did not. And I went on to try to schedule him for like even a month from now. And basically the site kicked me off and said, you know, have you had COVID? Yes, within the last 90, you know, just kicked me right off.
Okay. I mean, I don't know why in particular that would be the case, because we do have guidance on our website that says that if you had or currently sick with COVID, you would wait at least 10 days have passed since your symptoms started, or if you had a test, so 10 days from the date of your test. And if you hadn't had a fever for the prior 48 hours without the use of fever reducing medication, and your overall symptoms have improved, you can take the vaccination. So it might just be a precaution that the hubs had to put in place with our partners who were administering the vaccine just for their purposes. I don't know for sure. I'm happy to go back and find out why that is the case.
Yeah, I really don't want to be going through 8,000 places.
Sure.
And constantly running into what is a system programming issue of coding.
Sure. Absolutely. I will definitely look into that.
Okay, thank you.
And the procedures, maybe you would tell the community board us, you know, and Will, if you call the community board, Will have the answer, right, Will? Will has the answer for everything.
Yes, he does.
I can at least get the answer.
And publicize it.
Eleanor Garley, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Apologies if I did not.
And Eleanor, you'll just have to hit the unmute button at the bottom of your screen, confirm unmuting.
Hi. Yes, a couple of questions. One is none of the sites that are listed indicate whether or not they're handicap accessible. And I would like to know why that information is not readily available. The next is that there's lists, 20, 30, 40 various sites, and you have to go to each site individually and fill in all the information over and over and over and over and over again, only to find at the end of this input that there's no space available, there's no time available, there's no date available, there's nothing. In other cases, especially in the hospital sites, which are among the worst, they don't give you a clear link to where you need to go, and you spend time trying to find it. Log in, fill in all their forms over again, and like the Hospital for Special Surgery indicates that they are no longer qualified by the state to give the primary vaccine. Why is this information not available right up front as you go to the site and said, sorry, we don't have anything until January of 2022? Whatever that date is or the time is, why is that information not available up front?
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, yes, absolutely. That is a frustration that people have all felt, is that each individual site, you have to re-register all of your information. And that's because we don't have the technology to integrate so that you fill it once and it populates into multiple different sites, unfortunately. So that's the reason why. And then also it's because appointments are constantly being put on the website as locations are receiving doses. So it's not that they can just say we're not ever going to have appointments. It's really it just puts the onus on the person to have to constantly navigate the website, constantly refresh to see when potentially appointments have been now rolled into the system again. And so that's where all the frustration is, and I completely understand. But unfortunately, that's just the technology we're working with, and that's why we're trying our best to make the website easier for people to use. But again, I don't want people to feel discouraged. I think it's important that you continuously check, because as locations receive their doses, they are adding the appointments onto their website. And on the city website, actually, it does indicate whether or not the location is handicapped accessible. And that's mostly all the city sites and the H&H sites are handicap accessible. So it does indicate on the website. I just checked.
New York State has only one site in Manhattan, and that's Javits. And of course, if you have difficulty walking, Javits is forget about it. And there's no other sites in the New York metropolitan area that are available. And in addition, they do not provide any transportation. So when I asked for additional information, she says, well, I'll Google it for you. Well, that's not a necessary assistance that I need. What I need is additional sites in Manhattan that are clearly identified as being handicap accessible. And what kinds of handicap accessibility, whether it's for people that are sight impaired or working with a walker or a cane or a wheelchair, none of that information is clearly available anywhere. And again, we can order, I can get 2 hours from Whole Foods and they will call me back if they don't have the steak that I want. Why can't the data, once it's entered, be stored by the various sites? And as the vaccine comes in and the spots open up, why don't we just get an email saying the sites for the next 2 days are open, come first, first come, first serve. And if you're lucky and you're awake, and you can go to the site, but at least you know that there's somebody there that's alive and an adult and dealing with your issue, rather than expecting us to come to them all the time, over and over and over again. We're in the 21st century, and it's insulting to us as residents and citizens of the United States of America that we have sites that are so antiquated.
I would just like to say one thing. I went to Jacob Javits. I would like you to double check this, but I saw them bringing out wheelchairs to people. So it may be that you don't have to walk as long as, well, there are wheelchairs, and there's a special line for wheelchairs if you need it. And they're very helpful there. So that may be one chance. I'm just
sorry, just to point out, I'm on the website right now, and it says for New York State Javits Center that it is handicapped accessible, because there's a little that symbol indicating it. But again, your point is well taken. It's not clear how accessible, what kind of accessibility is provided. So that's absolutely information I can take back. And again, I completely agree that our technology is completely antiquated. And we're hoping that as pharmacies come online, as primary care doctors, there are many other ways that you can then schedule your appointment, so you can avoid the city hubs and the city sites and the state sites altogether.
Well, I called for the New York State, and I was told that it was not handicap accessible. And I said, and there's Potsdam, there's a spot. So I said, well, how am I supposed to get to Potsdam? And she basically said, it's your problem, not ours. So
the city is also providing transportation to anybody over the age of 65 to any site. It doesn't have to be a city-run site. So if you call the city's hotline, which is 877-FACS-4-NYC, you can schedule a transportation option.
And just one last question. You've been saying hope, 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 hope. You must have said hope about 15 times. Mm-hmm. That indicates to me that there is no plan. So
not that there's not a plan, it's just,
rather than
mm-hmm.
hoping, I would like to know what your plan is in order to make the lives of people who live in New York a bit better. Because right now, you're asking us to do this, do more and more and more, and yet we're not getting any responses from the city or the state.
Sure. I think my hope is that the supply becomes readily available. So as that happens, it's not just up to the city, right? It's the federal government. It's the manufacturers need to develop more. The supply chain needs to be smoothened out so that, shipments aren't running late again. So all of these have to be put into place for us to be able to vaccinate. We have the hubs available. We have Citi Field ready to be up and running. It's really a matter of supply at this point. And so when I say hope, I mean, I'm hoping that New York City gets its fair share of supply, because we are ready to vaccinate as many people as possible.
I just want to next this, if I may. There was an article about a young man who was on our community board at one point, who's not techie, that managed to make an app that accumulated everything.
Yes.
There was another, I don't have it here.
I did read that article, yes.
Why can't the city call him up and say, we want your app?
That's a great question. Yeah. I don't have the answer to that. I just don't know. I think there are lots of regulations in place that prevent that from happening in a very efficient and effective manner, unfortunately. And that's what people say about city government and its bureaucracies, right? So again, there are those websites out there that people have taken it into their own hands to sort of gather this information and find available appointments so that other people don't have to scour the internet. And so I believe there is one, I don't recall the name off of the top of my head, but apparently it's a group of people, and they just constantly look through all the available appointments, and they put them up on their website for people to see. So that's helpful. Again, that's not city. That's not the city's website, unfortunately. And again, we wish that we would be able to have this technology available to make the lives of all New Yorkers much easier, especially seniors who we know have a difficult time. Immigrant seniors like my parents, would never be able to navigate a website like New York City's website. So we absolutely understand. Again, it's just what we have at our disposal at this point to operate with, and it's not ideal. But again, as supply increases, there will be opportunities for everyone to receive their vaccination from a multitude of different sources. And so you don't need to depend on the city hubs to get your vaccination if you don't want to.
There's something called turbovax.info, I think. Turbovax.info. I was told. I haven't looked at it, but I was told.
Yeah, I believe that you're right, Barbara. But there is that one site that has been doing all of the heavy lifting for a lot of people.
Okay, sorry, Rebecca.
Let's unmute Cause.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. You know, number one, the website, the state, the city, whoever put it up, the website from the start was less than, you know, something that, you know, a fourth grader could do. How much, one other question, I've got a few questions. On the city and the state, there was a phone number and a site you register to get the vaccine. Where does that information go? Because I registered on the state, the city, or whichever one it was, never received a call back, never received an email. So why did I register? For what?
That's a great question. I am happy to find out. I'm pulling together a list of questions to follow up with the Vaccine Command Center right now. So I don't know. You don't recall whether or not it was the state or the city's website?
It was both. I cannot remember any
That's
of
fine.
the, you know, then you go on the state find a vaccine or something, and it points you to a whole bunch of places. But, you know, how much coordination was there from the state from the state and the city? How much coordination was there between the agencies and the rollout of the vaccine? Because people from out of state, not living here, not working here, were coming in and were able to get the vaccine, but the city people could not get it for some reason. So how much coordination was there between the state and the city? And how did the vaccine get to some drugstores, some private small hospitals, that people were able to get it, but you had to know that place?
Sure. So those were a whole bunch of questions at once. So forgive me if I forget to answer one. So I believe that there obviously is coordination between the state and the city, because, you know, the state, we register with the state for the allocation of doses, and the state then, you know, advocates on our behalf to the federal government, and then it's up to the city to distribute the doses among all the city sites. So that's where the coordination is. But in terms of you know, in the beginning, there were very like the guidelines provided by the state were unclear, which is why people from outer state were able to receive vaccinations. I think in the beginning, they wanted to make sure that if you were in New York City, that if you were a person here, that you should get the vaccine because you were either living or working here. But there was very little in terms of proof of eligibility in that regard. But then the state then realized that it was becoming a huge problem, mostly because the city was saying that we're witnessing a lot of outsiders taking up our doses. Can you do something about that? And that's when the state implemented proof of eligibility. So you have to either be a resident of New York City or work in New York City to be able to receive a vaccination in the 5 boroughs. So that was implemented after, you know, people were realizing that other people were skirting the system and getting into New York to receive vaccinations.
And what about your view or the DOH's view on the mayor pushing for the second to be issued as a second dose to be given as a first rather
right,
than
so not having to have a necessary set amount of reserve for second dose. I think that was only an issue when our shipment was late and the city had to cancel appointments. And we had to cancel appointment not because we didn't have enough doses, because we did have second dose available on hand, but because of the restriction on using second dose as first dose. so because of that and having to have a set amount of reserve in place, I definitely understand the reasoning behind that. You don't want to give first doses to folks and then not have a second dose available for them in that time frame necessary to receive your second dose. But I think what the mayor was stating was that the city should have a little bit of flexibility because we knew the shipment was coming. It was just late. And so it wasn't like there were not going to be a replacement of those second dose vaccines. So we should have been allowed to use those so we didn't have to cancel people's first dose appointments. So I think that was a very specific case in which he was referring to allowing the city to use second dose as first dose.
And one final question. What has the city, the state, and all the powers to be learned with the fiasco for the past 2 or 3 months?
So I think we learned that all the planning you can do still doesn't necessarily set you up for reality, right? I think, in times of peace, there are lots of plans in place for these mass vaccination hubs. And I think the issue is that with the nature of this vaccine needing extremely cold temperatures to store, not being able to just, bring it to homebound seniors, having, the need to make appointments instead of just showing up and having vaccines available for everyone at any given point. I think all of these things have to be taken in consideration. I think, when we're planning, we were hoping for best case scenario in terms of, we could set up these hubs really quickly, which we have, and that vaccines would be available and people wouldn't have to make appointments and that we could just have folks come through and get their vaccinations. But, part of it is that the reality is this vaccine, these two particular vaccines are very special in the fact that they require 2 doses. Also a reason why appointments are needed so people can be able to have their 2 doses scheduled out for them. So again, like the confluence of all of these different issues sort of made our planning a little bit, they have that saying that, we plan and the gods laugh, right? Because, all sorts of things happen. So not to say that the city never planned for something like this, we're always planning. But it just seemed like with this particular vaccine rollout, it just seemed like there were lots of things stacked up against us.
Okay, thanks. So you're going to be ready for the next pandemic?
Hopefully. I mean, we'll definitely take into consideration all the things that we've learned here, right? And really, really plan for worst case scenario.
Okay, but we have a recording of it, so we'll hold you to it.
Yes, I'm bringing all of this back to our leadership over at the health department.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kaz.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Not I do.
Okay, Barbara, why don't you go ahead and we'll see if anyone else has any questions.
I have for both presenters. I thank you both, and I know they're difficult and they're questions that I knew couldn't easily be answered. But one of them, I think both for both. I hear what you're saying, Pauline, but the mayor keeps saying there's no reason why we should keep a second dose. This has caused so much anxiety amongst us. I really believed I was having the second dose when I've had the Band-Aid on my arm. So the question is that a good idea? But for the doctor, I'd like to know is there a time period? I mean, de Blasio says that you could wait 6 weeks. Is that true? Do we know how long you could wait before the first dose before the second dose isn't a second dose anymore?
Right. So again, with the Pfizer and the Moderna, the 3 versus 4 weeks. I've heard 42 days being the maximum. And, I think that there's been, do you need to start over if you don't get your second vaccine within the 42-day limit? I think the jury's out on that, given that there just really haven't been that many cases of that situation. And there's been back and forth. I think at one point in England, they were deciding to just give 1 dose of 2 doses, saying that way they're going to reach more people and they'd get some protection. The feeling here in the United States is not to do that. We've been pretty committed, and I think with Dr. Fauci, we've been really pretty committed for these two vaccines anyway, to give both of them. As you may know, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a 1-dose vaccine. And so that's going to be a great addition to what we have already. And also, hopefully, there's going to be a lot of it available.
I'm just going to say, I had said this to Pauline before, I just wish that the mayor and the governor would be able to get along enough to give us a unified response, because I do listen to both, and it's very anxiety making to hear different points of view and you don't know what's happening.
I'm bad in a lot of things, right?
Well, without getting too political.
Right.
Another question I have, I think for you, Doctor, is what does these percentages mean? So when they say that you're 90-something% with the Moderna, does that mean that I have a 10% out of 100 people, 10 people will get sick?
No, it means that of the in their studies, they studied literally tens of thousands of people and it was placebo versus not placebo. Right. So there were X number of people who got COVID, even though they had the vaccine, and there were a lot more who got COVID when they didn't get the vaccine. And the difference between those two, it was a 94% improvement rate. So
I'm working.
So you can't necessarily, it does lead to the, you can infer that of 100 people who get the vaccine, 5-6% of those people may get COVID.
And is that like the worst type of COVID, or
No, that's a great question, actually. And this is also just an important thing to remember about these vaccines and why it's so fantastic that they have these high percentages, is when you think about it, the regular flu vaccine every year has an effectiveness ranging from 50 to 70%. So compared to what we were hearing about COVID vaccines, much less. And yet it's very well thought that if you've been vaccinated and you get the flu, if you're in the 50% or 60% who do get the flu, your flu is going to be much less. And that has definitely been the case for all these vaccines. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which has less efficacy, I think the numbers were 72% in the United States and as low as 57% in the South African studies, but it had 85% efficacy in terms of severe illness. And I read a study that said that of the J&J vaccine, that after 28 days, no patient needed to be hospitalized and no one died. So even though you can say, oh, it's only 85%, if you do get the infection, it's going to be less of a virulent infection.
For older people, even for those, and for the Moderna, those two will be less virulent.
Yes.
That's very good news. So I'm going to ask a very personal question. Can I go and visit my daughter and grandkids in 2 weeks from now? Is it safe?
That's the $1 million question.
It is.
Yeah, we have to go by what, the higher ups are telling us. And, social distancing is still going to be a factor, because how are you going to get to your daughter? And if you're going to be traveling in public transportation, and are you going to be at risk to even get a mild infection that you could then transmit to somebody else? I think we're still in a position of having to protect ourselves, because even if we have a mild infection, there's a lot of people who are not vaccinated out there, and the risk is of giving it to them. I don't, Pauline, the city may have a more.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so we do advise that even if you have received both doses of your vaccine, you should still continue to maintain the core 4, which is to stay home if you're sick, to wear a face covering in public, when you're around people who are not members of your immediate household. So wearing a face covering both indoors and outdoors, and washing your hands frequently and maintaining social distancing. So we are still asking everyone to follow those guidelines, because like the doctor mentioned, still not everyone is vaccinated, and you don't know whether or not, even if you are vaccinated, whether or not you still have the ability to transmit the virus to other people. So we really want people to continue to follow those social distancing guidelines just to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe.
And therefore basically have a very isolating life many of us have had.
Yeah, and it really speaks to the need for everyone to get vaccinated. The more people that get vaccinated, the less of it's going to be around. We see a huge diminution of new cases already in the last month, which is so great. And yet, there are still more, more and more people are still dying from this. And those communities and places where people are ignoring it or not wearing masks, these are places where vulnerable people are still getting sick. And it just, it's for ourselves, but it's also for the people around us.
I think that for Colleen, I have another question. So the mayor has, or maybe it was the governor also, has increased the types of people, the types of groups that can be vaccinated. However, it isn't just older people that aren't, technical. It takes hours and hours to sit in front of your computer to get something. So I took a cab to Jacob. I asked the cab driver if he was getting vaccinated. He said, I spend hours and I can't get anything. I want everybody, please, I want everybody to be vaccinated, but is it smart to keep increasing the groups without increasing the availability and making it more frustrating for everybody around?
Sure, that's a great question. So the state does determine the eligibility. And I believe with the new federal guidelines and having the federal government commit to more doses to jurisdictions, I think that is why the governor felt comfortable, expanding on the eligibility. Also, you can't just stay at one group for a very long time. You do have to open it up to more people so that they have the opportunity to get vaccinated as well. But I believe that it is also based on supply. And so to really touch on your point for TLC drivers and restaurant workers and them not having the ability to just sit over a computer to look for a vaccination site, I believe that the Citi Field site that is opening hopefully tomorrow, they will be putting a set amount of doses aside specifically for restaurant workers and TLC drivers so that they have more access to the vaccine. And I get that, yes, it is in Queens and probably a little bit difficult for some folks to get to, but there is at least that ability for them to know that certain doses are set aside specifically for them. I think that's just one way the city is trying to make things more accessible and available to those people who need it the most, right? So you're right, absolutely. Seniors are not the only ones who are having issues with the computer. In fact, some seniors are great with the computer. It's really about that more of that digital divide where people who don't have access to or are working very long hours and just don't have the time to be able to sit in front of a computer to try and nab those appointments as they come up. So we really are trying our very best to work with community-based organizations to have some folks help people schedule appointments at different locations as well. That's sort of being rolled out as a pilot in Upper Manhattan, I believe. So there are ways that we are really trying to make sure that folks who really do need the vaccine are getting access to it.
And I had one other question and left my mind. Rebecca, is there anybody else that has questions?
No, I don't see one, but I actually do have a question. It's about people who have a severe history of anaphylaxis. I know that the CDC and the UK has updated its guidance, as you said, so that, obviously be careful, but if you just have a history of anaphylaxis to food, environmental, I guess, triggers, you can get the vaccine. My question is, do you have any details on what studies have been done? Have they now included people with severe or a history of allergies in kind of the pool of people for trials?
I think that they've kept track of everybody who's had any kind of severe reaction. So I'm sure there's a database for that. I I don't know exactly the specific details of that. And, you know, my understanding is that if you're someone who, you know, you think you might have had an anaphylactic reaction because your parents told you when you were little you did, you need to just talk about it with your doctor and just sort of, again, the risk benefit, depending on what that reaction may or may not have been and to what. But the particular, you know, specifically people who had a known anaphylaxis reaction against any kind of medication or drug need to really be careful and talk to their doctors.
And would you still advise people who have to carry an EpiPen around to still consult with their doctors?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's
definitely. Yeah. If you're someone who carries an EpiPen around, you'd need to talk to your doctor before you get vaccinated.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? I don't see anyone. So thank you both so much for staying with us for so long.
I really appreciate it. I know this is difficult because there are so many unanswered questions, but you heard our frustrations, and thank you. And I hope we see you.
You're so welcome. It was really enjoyable. I'm happy to, if someone wants to email me questions, that's always possible too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
before we get to old business and new business, maybe we could put that number, the hotline, in the chat for transportation.
Sure, I can send that to Will.
Okay. Okay, does anyone have any old business? No. Any new business? Cause, any new business?
Is Cause unmuted?
No, that was a bad joke.
Thank you. And thank you, Kaz, for
Does anyone
under new business last month that we should have this meeting. Thank you all so much. And I don't know if Rena and Ilana is still on, but it was wonderful, inspiring.
Does anyone have a motion?
I think we
Motion to close.
Okay. I'll second that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.